Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today we're talking about Quarkchain. We're doing an exclusive update about all the recent discussions, particularly with regard to the changes and amendments made to the vesting period of Quarkchain. We have the CEO in the hot seat today. His name is Qi Zhou. Thank you very much for being on the channel once again, Qi.
Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to be here.
Likewise, mate. Now, obviously, this is designed to be an objective interview. It is not paid for. It is not about shilling. This is about information for the crypto community. So, Qi, could you verify for them that this is not a paid or sponsored video in any way?
Yeah, of course, it is a not paid video.
Thank you. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. I really want to get down to discuss to the facts. I want to really explore what has been happening of late. I've looked through the Telegram, looked through comments. Basically, there's been a vesting amendment made by the Quarkchain team. Can you tell us exactly what those changes are, Qi?
And so basically, we are both going to postpone the distribution schedule to another 9 months. Which means that in these 9 months, we are not going to have a new, distribution of the tokens to the private sale purchases. And then basically after 9 months, then we are going to distribute this in 3 events, last for roughly a half year.
Okay, so from the 9 months complete delay, and then three installments are going to be made over the course of half a year, as you said, so a 6-month period. Now, I want to ask you, most importantly, why? Why did you do this, and why did you delay for 9 months specifically?
Also, there are a lot of uncertainties these days, especially in terms of regulations and also many others. So I think we have made a very thoughtful discussion with all the key players in our project, and then we figure out this is probably the best way to make sure we are safe before this uncertainty is clear.
Okay, so your argument, you're saying that it was about securing the best prospects for the investment, because obviously that's the initial premise for those looking at Quarkchain. They are also hopefully thinking about the utility, the long-term viability, but in the first instance, they often, and rightly so, think of it as an investment. So are you saying that it was really to protect those people, those initial investors?
So actually, I would say this because of uncertainties and so that it's better to protect all of us. So I think, and then we discuss with the lawyers and then also discuss with a lot of other players, advisors, and say, hey, I know this is a tough decision, but we believe this is probably one that we can protect everybody's.
Okay, so you mentioned lawyers. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because obviously you're bound by the advice from your own lawyers with regard to this. Now, there are definite binding agreements with regard to anyone who initially invested. So I want to talk to you about that. What is the legal rights that you have to make those amendments, given that there were contractual agreements with the initial investors? What can be done, and are you following along with that binding agreement?
So the great agreement basically clearly, even though probably I cannot show the details, but actually clear says there's basically a refund option and in connections of the regulation environment changes, or probably potential to change the basically the terms in the contract at our own discretion. So we basically carefully read all these terms and then explain actually to everyone. But we also appreciate the understanding of all our purchases, and then we actually receive the most of the support from them.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that in detail, about the degree of support generally and whom is actually supporting. But going back to those initial investors, considering that obviously there is a change in the price of Ethereum that's been had, I would assume that that wasn't the only mode of payment potentially available, but that would have been the major mode of or of a form of currency that you received. Given these changes over time, what are your thoughts on the fairness? Forgetting about legalities, obviously you've alluded to you're following and towing the line there, but what about the morality, the ethics behind making changes and then potentially forcing those who want to do the refund to lose from the deal?
Actually, this is not like this is basically clearly written in the contracts and regarding how to refund and how much to refund and what kinds of rate, and then this is very clearly written. And so when people sign, then people basically should agree like what the term says. And actually, we are already doing a lot of like, for example, there are actually a lot of costs also involved during this development procedure and all these things, which should be also deducted from the refund, but actually we do not. So, and actually we have a very small amount of refunds, very small, like, yeah, I think that's the, what have been like objective written in the contract, and also we just exercise like what the contract says.
Okay, can we talk about that in percentages? Qi, obviously you would have done an analysis of this with your team. What's the percentage of those who initially invested in Quarkchain that have actually requested that refund?
I don't have exact numbers, but the percentage will be like a single digit of the percentage.
Okay, so that obviously reflects on what you were saying before, in the confidence that many of the people who initially, and I say people as in significant investors, strategic investors, clearly they see the value, I would assume, by holding their position in the long term of Quarkchain.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, now thanks for clarifying that. What about the SEC? Just want to check with you, are there any inquiries being made about this, given that it is the first time we've seen these kind of vesting changes led from a company, made public? Is the SEC knocking on your door, or any regulatory body?
So I think SEC is like basically right now these days investigating a lot of projects, probably also learning a lot of projects of like have these international issues and to non-US, and then see what's going on there, and is any other like potential like issues with US. And then we also actually welcome SEC can provide clear guidelines, especially for us. For example, we do not accept any persons, and we do not basically allow any US persons to purchase. And then also from public sale, we have very strict basic KYC. I personally also review several. So that make sure that we can follow this. But we welcome there's a clear guidelines from SEC to say, hey, what's the best practice here?
Right. Now, in terms of transparency, how transparent are you with regard to the list of strategic investors? We noticed that other projects have actually listed some of them before. We see now things like Bigger Go, for example. They're very transparent about the people who are their super nodes, and they are essentially often those big players, strategic investors. How transparent are you going to be, or are you presently, with regard to those who are on the list and willing to stay with Quarkchain?
Oh, so basically we are pretty transparent. Actually, all the transactions, all these things are basically on the blockchain, so that all these things actually are transparent. And then we also give the contract, which we show that how we implement these vesting plans and how we exercise this refund or this procedure. All of these are basically on chain, and people can read. It's open sourced, so people can read the code. And also we also borrow like OpenZipLink standard contract to implement these features. I think there's a lot of transparency, and also we are also like, for example, open the wallet that we are going to lock in these 9 months. For example, we have like these ERC20 transactions are being held in the network, and for this, for example, vesting smart contracts, we are already open sourced, and basically everybody can check it in the Etherscan, and also we give all the addresses that has running this vesting smart contract and how we exercise it to for a new distribution schedule. And we are also like we show what are the wallet address that are being locked in the next 9 months. And so we welcome everybody to check if there's any changes of these wallets.
Right. Okay. So you've made it clear that transparency is a key focus of the Quarkchain philosophy, and you're going to practice that from making sure everything is available on the blockchain. What about your due diligence with regard to exploring what the community sentiment was? Did you do enough, do you think, Qi, with the community pre-move, before you moved on the chessboard and you decided to do the vesting changes with the team? Did you do enough consultation?
So basically, a community like actually, we hear a lot of voices from community, and people have a lot of opinions. Definitely, we both from our, for example, we have like bi-weekly AMA, so we hear like people's voice, and also we have Reddit have a regular collecting the questions, and also in the Twitter we basically regularly collect all the opinions from our communities. And so actually we keep like listening from them. And I feel pretty happy is that a lot of our community members, when they are showing up, they ask questions, they are more focused on the technologies, asking a lot of regarding, hey, what this parameter means and what is the security means, all these things. And so I think we try to be a project that is more focused on the technology rather than, I mean, there's a lot of like distractions these days, but
sure,
yeah,
but I need to interrupt for a moment there. I mean, you say distraction, but the vesting is not just a distraction. Clearly, it's about the investment itself. So what I'm saying is, before you made that decision to make a significant move like that, did you properly consult the community, inform them that that was the intention, so they had input through a more democratic process, or did you spring that on them? Did you let them know subsequent to the vesting decisions of the team?
I think during this procedure, it's, I'll say, because this uncertainties and then so it's, I mean, it's hard to, for example, to say, hey, we vote from community, or we say, hey, we want to have some kind of democratic like procedure, because a lot of things like this is something that we have very less flexibility to do it.
Right.
But definitely in this future governance model, and also a lot of these events, more from technical side, where we have a much more flexibility to, for example, to adopt different opinions, then we will have more freedom to ask what the community says, and also maybe some voting, also some kind of mechanism to have a better governance there.
Sure,
so,
and it makes complete sense. And I don't mean to interrupt, but that is part of your roadmap. I've read through it, and many of the prominent, authentically decentralized or moving in the direction of decentralized projects are building in voting mechanisms, much more democratic means of allowing for a governance body that's voiced and decided by the people. This did not happen with Quarkchain in this instance, and that's clear, but you're making the point that this was a fiscal decision, had to be made given the market, according to you and your team with regard to what we're seeing now in the bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, but I want to talk to you now about advisors. I've read through comments. Some of them are quite aggressive, quite direct, very specific. People have made very forward, very open statements about their disdain for your choice to make these amendments. What do you say to those people, particularly advisors in the past, who have really been vocal about and standing up against the vesting changes? What would you like to say?
Yeah, I think every decisions definitely have supporters and also people who like disagree. So we basically we feel lucky that we have a lot of supporters in standing on our side, and I think this is a project with like built for more people, for not only for us, not only for developer community, for the general people, but for more people. So in that directions, we have to get more supports from most supporters, and then we clearly will accept like some disagreement. Then we offer also options for these disagreements, right?
But let's talk about that more deeply, though, because the paradox is these were people who were advisors or closely connected with the Quarkchain, I guess, initial startup. In that, this was way back in the beginning of the year. Some of these people I'm alluding to were heavily involved in supporting you. Why would they suddenly flip? When you're mentioning that so many are supportive, the majority, in fact, are supportive of the vesting change in that they are holding their position, why would some so vocally and publicly disparage the decision? What's the motivation for that?
I think probably they have different positions and different understanding of the situations. And some people would think about the project support from long term, and some maybe think about short term. So it's very hard for us to understand all the positions there. But definitely our stand. I will always stand is make sure the product is succeeding long term.
Long term. Okay, so that's really the difference. And what you're alluding to there is that you really want to build out this for something that's viable as a real business. Now, if we could talk about, I guess, with regard to fees, I wanted to check with you, the way in which you did your refund, was it completely fair? Was it equal with regard to how you refunded every party? Or was there any preferential treatment in any way?
So every party are just refunded in the equal sense. So they just exactly follow what the term says, and then we don't have any special treatment for any special parties. I think this is very critical also for us, because not only to the purchasers but also to our community members. So we do a great efforts to make sure everybody is stand on the same, treated in the same.
Right. Now, just in terms of being treated the same, I also wanted to ask you about the investors themselves, the strategic investors. Is it true that some of the investors who perhaps aren't necessarily traditional VCs or even crypto VCs, were there any individuals or pools involved, or was there any really large allocations afforded to, I guess, less than reputable entities in any way? I want to check with you right now. Did anyone get substantial allocations when perhaps they shouldn't have?
So we have to do a lot of efforts to figure out these pools and try to basically collect the evidence and to basically make a discussion, because we already explicitly mentioned that we do not accept pools and all this kind of this, and also a lot of community members are also helping us. And so we already try my best, and I think we actually the best knowledge and also best we have, we trying to avoid this case. But sometimes I feel this is the best we can do,
right? Well, let's now, sorry, go ahead, of course.
We already actually cut several things, allocations, because of these kind of violations. But still, we need evidence to make sure what's happening.
Of course. Now, I want to talk to you about Block VC. Now, there's been some suggestions and rumors out there with regard to Block VC. I want to hear it from you, though. What's the relationship, and what's the role of Block VC in conjunction with the vesting changes and even just Quarkchain generally?
So Block VC is our early investors, and basically they are very believe in our technologies, and so we also they see there's a lot of ecosystem they can build on top of us, and they would like to join this ecosystem. And so basically we have QEF, which is Quarkchain Eco Fund, that is built in progress to basically raise funds to support this ecosystem on top of that.
The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is Binance, Qi, because obviously there's been Binance drama in the Quarkchain camp in the past. Can we talk about that? What was the original issue with you and Binance? And what was the public saying? What were their concerns?
I mean, drama.
The drama, yes,
The,
the drama with regard to the initial tokenomics, the initial benefit that we saw, the questions raised with regard to how Binance and also Quarkchain benefited from the original tokenomic design and the release of the token particularly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainties. So unexpected things happen, like especially the project runs so fast. Though so a lot of token, like the basic distribution plan, is not was not scheduled to design to have such a rapid change. And so once we basically like realize, oh, there's basically some for example, some concern regarding initial token supply, and then I think we also closely work with Binance, trying to clarify all those concerns and to make sure that everybody is aware of the potential risk, and also make sure that what people can project it was the plan, and so that people can have a more reasonable understanding of what the project is going.
Right. Okay. So you clarified that you've moved on from that issue. Let's now talk about your current partnerships. I want to talk to you about Anchor, D-Chain or DX-Chain as it's maybe known, and Seller. Now, some of these, particularly D-Chain, it's performed very badly in the sense of there was obvious reactions in the marketplace. There was some serious dumping had. Are these partnerships real? What's the future for these partnerships? Should we be concerned? Is there any superficial aspect to these current partnerships that you've forged?
So our partnership is more focused on technologies rather than probably the secondary market of what looks like. So we basically want to because I know some of the technical people in the DX-Chain pretty well. They have experience in big data and also, for example, Hadoop, these projects. And then so we understand how this may be able to make big impacts in the blockchain. So we are more focused on technology collaborations rather than on like potential like secondary connections. And also, yeah, we also basically for all the other projects like Anchor and Seller, we are also focused on technologies.
Okay,
yeah.
So are you saying that you regard Anchor, D-Chain, Seller as cutting edge technology? Are you fully able to stand in, I guess, as the position of the leader of Quarkchain and say, we chose these because we believe in these companies long term?
We believe these technologies that have their merits in the long term, and also we believe that this technology are complement our positions, our technologies in different areas, both in terms of storage, distributed computation, off-chain solutions, and this is something we really need. So that's why I feel this is technology can easier to put them together to build a better ecosystem.
Right. So what you're saying is these are real connections forged for real reasons, and once again reinforcing that long-term position that you've mentioned previously. Okay. What about the token itself? Obviously, the token has changed in its value over time. There's a bear market currently, but I wanted to ask you with regard to the team itself. What about the team's position with regard to the vesting agreement? Is the team also going along with the same decision, and are they also going to have a significant delay in access to their own token?
Yeah, actually, in our announcement, we already mentioned like the team also will be locked in these 9 months, and then we know this is a hard decision for team members, but people like believe in the project and believe in the long term, and they say, hey, this is something that people should really they really want to stick to it.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about a few things that are a little bit lighter. And thank you for being transparent. That was quite a difficult and challenging series of questions. What about the vision? What's the plan for Quarkchain from your position as the leader?
So we believe like blockchain is still in a very early stage, and there are a lot of technologies that is emerging on top of blockchain, and also a lot of applications that could be enabled by the blockchain and become better. So we see there's a huge opportunity here, and we are just in a very early stage. And so we would like to basically contribute our efforts and our time to these new exciting technologies. So that's why we recently open source our code, and we are also open to testnet TPS competitions to welcome people around the world to reproduce what we can do, and also going to open our next version of testnet to have everybody to join the network to experience what it looks like.
Okay, so you mentioned a very important term. You've open sourced the code. That means developers can now utilize and access all the aspects of Quarkchain so they can really build out the platform of their own choice and to create DApps. How are you going to be competitive though with this, Qi? Given that there are already big platforms out there, how are you going to compete and make it through this bear when so many are going to fail?
So I think there's basically two directions we are putting any focus on. One is scalability. Basically, we employ the horizontal scalability solutions to improve us, and we believe we really make a unique technology here and contributions here to the horizontal scalability technologies in blockchain. And so I think we really feel excited about that. And second is regarding flexibility, which is one key factors we are going to do in Quarkchain 2.0. The flexibility means that we are able to first incorporate a lot of vertical solutions, including new consensus, maybe new virtual machine, or new ledger, or virtual, or even token economies onto the blockchain. And second is that with the this flexibility, we are also be open to a lot of like new vertical domain chains. Like for example, they are more focusing on some specific areas, but they do not need to rebuild the whole blockchain basically infrastructures, and so they can focus on their expertise. So I think there's a lot of this flexibility and also possibilities that enabled by the Quarkchain. And so when our mainnet is launched, actually this is just beginning, because there are a lot of things that we want to do. For example, new consensus like proof of stake, a new multi-native token that enable probably using stablecoin as a payment, and also transaction gas. And so we see this a lot of interesting things, and we welcome anybody to join this journey and on board.
Right, so mainnet, let's talk about dates. You've mentioned a lot there, and it's quite important that people understand that this vision is with regard to Quarkchain 2.0. It's the next iteration. It's going to build in many different mechanisms haven't really been done before. Most importantly, you mentioned that this scaling capacity will change with the mechanism itself. These things are really important. But what about the dates? Because we're going to see this all correlate once this happens with the mainnet. Talk us through the dates.
So for Quarkchain 1.0, we plan our mainnet to be launched at the end of this year or early next year. For the 2.0, there is a mix of different consensus or multi-native tokens. A lot of feature probably will be tested early next year, but it should be generally available in probably the end of next year.
Okay, so once again, long-term vision. What about DApps? The current interest right now, businesses knocking on the door of Quarkchain, quite literally, I would assume. Talk us through evidence, though. What are the numbers looking like? How's things building for the business side, the enterprise value, the business on the blockchain for Quarkchain itself? What's happening there?
Actually, we basically have two directions. One is collaborate with a lot of internet companies. They have a lot of users, and then they want to employ the blockchain to address a lot of issues. And we are closely working with them and to see how our solutions are able to better address their problem. And second is there are a lot of projects, they already established some DApps or some business already on the top of blockchain. And so, for example, you just mentioned like seller and Anchor and also DeFi, also a lot of other applications that use them. And so I think we are also closely with them to see how we are able to cooperate together. So as long as there's one or two killer applications that can be shown up, and then the whole picture of the blockchain will be completely different.
Absolutely. Now, if we could talk about your virtual machine as well. You alluded to that with regard to the 2.0 or 2.0 changes coming up. What's happening with the virtual machine, given that it's an imperative for really having a strong position in this race to build out something that essentially can make it for the long term?
Actually, our first step is to adopt a mature technology here. In terms of virtual machine, we support like a Ethereum virtual machine, but we will add a lot of features regarding multi-nifty tokens and also sharding, so that the contract itself is sharding aware. This is one thing we can make it much better. And second is that we are also learning, actually starting a lot of new virtual machines technologies. One is probably WebAssembly, which is planned to significantly improve the efficiency of the basically the virtual machine transaction efficiency. So I think in that we are also plan to see if there's a mature that we can use and we can also be deployed on top of us.
Right.
And definitely we also welcome our community members to contribute new ideas and new virtual machines to the system, and then we are welcome to any good suggestions there.
Absolutely. So given that you're utilizing the EVM, as you mentioned, building upon that, looking at sharding, looking at new ways with WebAssembly, are you confident that Ethereum has a strong future? I mean, you hear a lot of FUD at the moment given the price changes. So I really do want to ask you, are you confident you've aligned with the right platform?
Yeah, Ethereum definitely has a very strong team, and they also plan to implement Casper and also sharding. And so we also have some discussion with Ethereum, and we really feel like that they are addressing some problem that is much more difficult than us. And then we definitely would like to see how they are able to address this blockchain problem, because like blockchain is still in the baby stage, and we definitely want to make it much stronger. And also we want to collaborate with Ethereum to help to build each other's. So I think this is more like open collaborations rather than competitions.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about that in the context of you having your own native token. Interoperability is a buzzword, obviously, especially for people like you who stand alone once you have that native token as a platform that can interact in a similar way, in a similar fashion to Ethereum. Are you looking forward to building more and more alliances with other like platforms such as Neo, such as Cardano, such as EOS, and the list goes on?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think they are, so like EOS, like Neo, they have a lot of also innovations in terms of consensus besides virtual machine. And definitely we want to, one direction we are exploring is to implement proof of stake as our shard consensus. And this is probably more like a Cardano, but since our special structure, we can simplify a lot of assumptions and also problems there. So we already have our experimenting. Actually, we finished our design, but we are implementing some early
proof of stake.
Proof of concept too.
Well, Ethereum's also doing the same, to be fair. They're still proof of work, essentially. So I think you're both aligned in that respect.
But we still kind of mix proof of work but proof of stake, but using different priority on this consensus. So we will still using proof of work as the root chain consensus, but proof of stake as a per shard consensus. Well, Ethereum is basically focused on proof of stake to provide kind of finality there. I think we are basically explore one by one. This is something that I think we are really excited about because we are really happy to see it, or if all this technology can some way to be put together to build a better ecosystem rather than compete with each other.
Right. Well, that was a good wrap up, I think, a segue to really a final statement from you. Thank you very much, Qi Zhou, for your time today. I appreciate that. You are the CEO leading Quarkchain into the next era of business on the blockchain. I don't mean to be corny, but you are really proving to be one of the key platforms emerging since we've seen first iterations of BTC, since we've seen Ethereum. We're now seeing the emergence of a few new ones that potentially could really build enterprise, build DApps for the long term. What would you like to say to the people, given we've discussed so much already with regard to some of the innovations you're making now?
So first, I'm very happy that we make a huge progress in for example, we just opened our source code since we start first coding in early this year and spent almost 8 months. Now we have this testnet, open source, and a lot of things making. And then we are actually expecting more and more changes in the field following months and also following years, not only us, but also the changes in the full blockchain community. And we see it's running very fast and there will be a lot of surprises. So we welcome everybody to work with us to make the whole thing much stronger and bigger. And we really believe this is something that we can make the blockchain better.
Absolutely. Well, reporting, obviously you are in Silicon Valley, one of the key places in the world for technological innovation. Thank you very much for your time today. I really look forward to discussing more of the updates, more of the developments of Quarkchain throughout your development as you emerge once again as something that is trying to be a genuine and real startup in the space. Wish you all the very best with your team, and thank you once again for this privilege to speak with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions and also time.
Very welcome. It's Qi Zhou, the CEO of Quarkchain. It's BlockchainBrad signing off. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you.